In this video we're going to discuss prepositions such as on, in, to, at, with and so on. Often we cannot directly translate from English, since where in English we might use in, for example, in Guernsey we might use at. Furthermore, the same word may act as a preposition and or adverb in one language but not in the other. For these reasons and others, we'll only give an overview of the usages in some situations, but this should form a basis on which more complex variants can be learned as they crop up. Okay, so let's start with to, from, at and of. So we've already discussed these in video 12. Basically they are a and de, but vary considerably when followed by the, since they may or may not merge with it to form a new word. We're not going to repeat the contents of video 12 here, but let's also recall from video 2 that to isn't necessarily a. So we say alai onogiter.
Alai onogiter.
Alai onogiter.
Alai onogiter, going to England, but we say alai a lounge.
Alai a lounge.
Alai a lounge.
Alai a lounge, going to London. Okay, so now let's go on to look at with and for. In Guernsey, with is dove and for is pour. Si dove mon frère.
Si dove mon frère.
Si dove mon frère.
Si dove mon frère, I'm with my brother. Chez pour ma mère.
Chez pour ma mère.
Chez pour ma mère.
Chez pour ma mère, it's for my mother. Alright, now the next set we're going to look at is before, after, in front of and behind. So we've discussed before in relation to time in video 8. Il est quart de vin d'ail.
Il est quart de vin d'ail.
Il est quart de vin d'ail.
Il est quart de vin d'ail. It's a quarter before 2, or as we'd say usually in English, it's a quarter to 2. Il est 10 vin d'ail.
Il est 10 vin d'ail.
Il est 10 vin d'ail.
Il est 10 vin d'ail. It's 10 before 2, or as we'd say, it's 10 to 2. So notice, as is often the case in Guernsey, there are two forms. There's a full form, de vin, and then there's abbreviated form with the E omitted, dva. So after is après. Ashra la après witar.
Ashra la après witar.
Ashra la après witar.
Ashra la après witar. She'll be there after 8 o'clock. Devin or dva can also be used in a spatial context, as well as when dealing with time. L'heure de dva.
L'heure de vin.
L'heure de vin.
L'heure de dva, the front wheels. And for behind or back, le derrière de la maison.
Le derrière de la maison.
Le derrière de la maison.
Le derrière de la maison, the back of the house. So for in front of, we say au devant.
Au devant.
Au devant.
Au devant. So here, the D apostrophe has migrated from the va and joined the en in front. So we'd say au devant. Okay. Elle est au devant de la maison. She is in front of the house.
Elle est au devant de la maison.
Elle est au devant de la maison.
Elle est au devant de la maison. One could say the same thing for behind the house, but one might equally well say elle est au derrière.
Elle est au derrière.
Elle est au derrière.
Elle est au derrière. She is at the back. And one could add la maison of the house. The difference between at the front, au devant, and in front, au devant, is small. And in the case au and on sound very similar to each other, and they're frequently both used in this context. Okay, so now let's look at how we say between, near, and beside. Between is ot. This is pronounced quite differently to the way it's written. So we say il est ot les dailles.
Il est haute les die.
Il est haute les die.
Il est haute les die. He's between the two. It's understood here that whatever the two are were identified earlier. Perhaps it could be two people or two columns. Near is prey or opprey, and near to is prede or opprede. Admeur oppreyed me.
Admeur oppreyed me.
Admeur oppreyed me.
Admeur oppreyed me. She lives near to me. Beside is acotaide. This literally means at, to, the side of. We can also mention ordre, which means in front of, but this frequently refers to another individual in front of another. Je peux pas vérifier te ordret me.
Je peux pas vérifier te ordret me.
Je ne peux pas vérifier te ordret me.
Je peux pas vérifier te ordret me. I can't see anything, you're in front of me. Alright, now let's go on to the next set. In, out, inside and outside. So the standard word for the preposition in is dans. T'es dans la shop.
T'es dans la shop.
T'es dans la shop.
T'es dans la shop, you're in the shop. But if you want to say that we're in England, for example, it's en. And if you want to say that we're in London, for example, it's a. Out is hov. For example, allez hov.
Allez ho.
Allez ho.
Allez hov, she's out. Inside is dedans, or again missing out the e, it's d apostrophe don. So, and once again, if we just have a d apostrophe, it tends to attach itself to the first word, and we're just left with don by itself. So we have là-dedans.
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 Là-dedans, inside there. And nous pouvez le-dedans.
Nous pouvez le-dedans.
Nous pouvez le-dedans.
Nous pouvez le-dedans. We can see the inside. So one should be careful here. Le means the, but la means there. It doesn't mean the. So we're talking about one is like there inside, or inside there, and the other is the inside. Okay, so to say I'm inside the house, si au-dedans.
Si au-dedans.
Si au-dedans.
Si au-dedans. I'm inside the house. This, now the D apostrophe is starting to sound a bit like a T, so we say au-dedans. Outside is dehors. If this is abbreviated to D apostrophe hov, then it sounds like twelve. Il est twelve.
Il est tour.
Il est toi.
Il est twelve. If we want to talk about the outside of the house, we can say le dehors de la maison or le dehors de la maison.
Le dehors de la maison.
Le tour de la maison.
Yeah, le dehors de la maison or le dehors de la maison, the outside of the house. We can also say si au-dehors, I'm outside.
Si autour.
Si autour.
Si au-dehors, I'm outside. Again, this T sound is coming out. Okay, so now finally we go to on, under, above, below and over. So as we shall see, this set is the most complicated. The first stumbling block is that the prepositions on and under in Guernsey sound very similar to some native English speakers. The word for on is su, and the word for under is su. So when you say su, you try to say double E, but you in fact say U. So you say su. And su is a bit easier perhaps to say. So let's try to say them in a sentence. Le cas est sur la chair.
Le cas est sur la chair.
Le cas est sur la chair.
Le cat est sur la chair. The cat is on the chair. Le cat est sous la chair.
Le cas est sur la chair.
Le cat est sous la chair.
Le cat is sous la chair. The cat is under the chair. The adverbs corresponding to the prepositions on and under are dessous and dessous. We can say, if we wish, le cat est dessous. The cat is beneath.
Le cat est dessus.
Le cat est dessous.
Le cat est dessous. The cat is beneath. Another complicating factor to note here is that the abbreviated forms d' sous and d' sous are frequently used, and they're usually pronounced with a T sound. So we have psu and psu.
Su and su.
Sous et sous.
Yeah. Psu and psu. As we've seen with don and ho, the T sound frequently comes out. So one says, il est dessous, for he is beneath.
Il est dessus.
Il est dessous.
Il est dessous, he is or it is beneath. So other examples of this usage of dessous and dessous are là-dessous, on there.
Là-dessus.
Là-dessous.
Là-dessous, on there. Là-dessous, under there.
Là-dessous.
Là-dessous.
Là-dessous, under there. Le-dessous.
Là-dessus.
Là-dessous.
Le-dessous, the upper side. And le-dessous.
Là-dessous.
Là-dessous.
Le-dessous, the underside. So now, what about above and below? Well, above means a higher position than the level we've been talking about. So if we say above the table, we mean that there's a gap between the table and the level we're describing. So it's up here somewhere. Okay? The word in this case is en dessous. So it's au-dessus or au-dessous de.
Au-dessus.
Au-dessous.
Au-dessus or au-dessus de, depending on the context. This form is also used with au rather than with en. The d apostrophe once again sounds like a T and moves across to join the en. So en, d apostrophe sus, sounds like au-dessus.
Au-dessus.
Au-dessus. So an example is t'es au-dessus de me.
T'es au-dessus de me.
T'es au-dessous de me.
T'es au-dessus de me, you're above me. So this could mean above physically, like you're on a ladder, or in terms of status, for example, you're in a more senior position. Below is au-dessous or au-dessous de.
Au-dessous or au-dessous de.
Au-dessous or au-dessous de.
Au-dessous or au-dessous de. So here's another subtle point. Unlike in front of and behind, there's an inherent asymmetry between on and under due to gravity. So when we say the cat is on the chair, we mean the cat is in contact with the chair. If the cat is under the chair, we don't mean it's stuck to the underside of the chair. So in fact, there's little difference between au-dessous de, which is underneath, and sous. Whereas au-dessous de and sous are different, since the latter indicates that the object being discussed is touching the surface. Okay, so lastly, there's also par-dessus and par-dessous, meaning over and from below. So these have an element of movement associated with them, so something is moving over or coming from below. So here's an example. La pelote fut par-dessus le fossé.
La pelote fut par-dessus la fossaille.
La pelote fut par-dessous le fossé.
La pelote fut par-dessus le fossé. The ball went over the hedge. À la passaille les filles par-dessous la loin.
À la passaille le fit par-dessus la loin.
À la passaille le fit par-dessous la loin.
À la passaille les filles par-dessous la loin. She has passed the thread under the wool. And it can also mean putting some article of clothing over another article of clothing. Il mit sa cotte par-dessus sakmais.
Imisakot pod su sakmais.
Imisakot pod su sakamais.
Imisakot pav de su sakmais. He put his coat on over his shirt. Alright, so we end with a short chat about the word there in Guernsey. So the prepositions we've been discussing typically involve time and space. So in English, the word we give to a place near us is here, and some distance away is there. So in Guernsey, there are three ways to say the word for some distance away. So that is, there are three types of there, depending on whether it's not too far, quite far, or far. So we've seen that here is ishai, and the standard word for there is la. But if the object is closer, we use ilo. Right, so an example would be leka ishai adaizai.
Leka ishai adaizan.
Leka ishai adaizai.
Leka ilo atrezai.
Leka ilo atrezan.
Leka ilo atreza.
Me leka la asizai.
Me leka la asizan.
Me leka la asiza.
Me leka la asizai. So the cat here is 2 years old. The cat over there is 3. But the one right over there is 6. So typically ilo would be used for an object located near the person you're talking with. So it would be the here of that person. Whereas la is a conventional there of English and might refer to a cat prowling in the distance, in the example that we've just used. So inside a house, ilo would normally refer to a location in the same room. The word la means further than this, but as with there in English, it's not defined in any more detail. We do, however, have a third there in Guernsey, which is further away from the standard there, and this is lala. So in terms of the closest to furthest away, the hierarchy of distance words in Guernsey is ishai, ilo, la, and lala.